Hello. In this video, I hope to encourage you and give you reasons to hope that there is indeed light at the end of the tunnel in your life and that God is not forsaken you. You see, a lot of people have said in life that God works in mysterious ways, and I personally have found that to be the case for myself. And I want to explain by sharing my own experience, my own testimony, as to why I'm saying what I'm saying. Back in August of 2023, my wife of a decade left me. This was one of the hardest, if not the hardest, moment of my entire life. I felt devastated. I felt lost. I had no clue of what was about to happen, and I didn't know if I was going to lose my house either. I just didn't know. And I was, of course, worried as well as a Bible believing Christian who preached the gospel, did meetings and things. I was worried as to what other Christians would think. Now, of course, a lot of Christians can be some of the most judgmental people out there. Now, not everybody's like that, thankfully, but a lot of people make assumptions about things that they don't really have a clue about. And of course, this is what I was worried about. Like, they had no clue, of course, of any details and stuff. Of course, nowadays, when I look back on this, like, I don't personally care what these people think. I don't care. And you know what? I've actually found when I have talked to people about things, the people I'm closest with, I've always had good conversations with them. So a lot of my worry was, um, it kind of gets blown out of proportion in your mind, if you know what I mean. So it wasn't as bad as what I thought it might be, but it doesn't, of course, change the fact that there are, in fact, people who are judgmental out there. I know that's, there are going to be people out there who will think in that way. But yeah, at the end of the day, they're not me. They're not the ones that went through this whole experience and things, so they have no clue. Another thing that went through my mind is that I thought to myself that I won't meet another person in my life, or in a relationship sense, whom I could relate to in regards to hobbies, opinions about things, and faith. It just seemed like a near impossibility in some ways. And in a way, I just wish that my wife hadn't left and that things could just go back to normal, right? Of course, looking back on things, you actually think, you know what, it was for the best what happened. So my way I look at things nowadays is not the same as I was looking at it back then. Now, of course, when this happened, of course, when she left, I didn't actually have much time to process what just happened, and I actually had work scheduled for the next day. You see, she'd left me on a Wednesday, right? And I'm supposed to work on a Thursday. So I was up all night. I was upset. I was panicked. I was crying. So I had to phone work and tell them I couldn't come in, and I couldn't even. I tried to tell them over the phone, but I couldn't utter the words because I just couldn't stop crying, and they knew obviously something serious had happened, and they told me I could just stay off, right? And thankfully, I had Friday, Saturday off as well. Um, it was just going to be way too difficult to go to work, way too difficult. And even when I did go to work, I found it difficult enough. I would sometimes cry, and it was very difficult. And telling my parents was also, it was actually the most difficult part of, telling anybody things, actually. Because on a Friday, we would usually go over for dinner, you see, and I didn't want to actually have to tell them that my wife had left. But I knew at the same time I couldn't keep it a secret from them, and like I could have, but it wouldn't be fair on them to do that. and it wouldn't be fair on myself. And it's not good for me to live in denial either, to pretend that things are still good and all that. You see, as far as my parents were concerned, everything was good in our relationship. Um, so they had no idea if this was coming, basically. So anyway, I told my family what had happened, and of course they were devastated. They felt this great loss of a family member. We all loved her as part of the family. And to make matters worse, the family cat died. My parents' cat died, and we all loved that cat. She was the most wonderful cat. She was one of these cuddle cats, and she was just young. We don't even know why she died. We can theorize, but we don't. We just don't know. So the fact that she died on the same day, like what on earth? Like seriously, like Satan without doubt was attacking at this time. It was like crazy. And of course, I had a presentation to do as well, or scheduled for the Sabbath coming, and I had to cancel it. It's just going to be too hard to do it. And the topic was actually going to be on the Ark of the Covenant, so a very important topic as far as I'm concerned. But I was just going to be too upset. I was probably going to cry at the meeting. I didn't want that. And no doubt my mind would be clouded. I just don't think there was any need to put myself through anything like that, dealing with people and facing them. And yeah, I think for me, it was just going to be too hard. Now, some time had passed, and I was organizing my new life without my wife. The house I was keeping, and I admit early on, living in the house, after my wife had left, it was strange because I wasn't used to living on my own, and so it didn't feel the same anymore here. And nowadays, I am used to being on my own in my house. Like it's just I've just grown accustomed to it, I guess. And but I have to admit, during this time early on after my wife had left, I was actually pretty upset with God about things. Like, why did this have to happen to me? Like, why didn't God answer my prayers? Like I felt like I was left to rot in a way by God. I just couldn't understand it. And part of the reason why I couldn't understand it is because I know in the past when I was a younger Christian, right? God did answer my prayers. Like he sometimes gave amazing answers, and so I know God is real. I know He answers and hears my prayers, but I just couldn't understand why it didn't seem like I got answered in this situation. And this is where we get into this whole God works in mysterious ways situation. Another thing was that I wasn't doing Facebook posts on Facebook like I was. I would post a lot of Christian content, and I wasn't doing the meetings anymore because I was struggling in my faith. I wasn't doubting God, but I just felt like I couldn't do it. I just felt like I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it. That's how much the situation affected me. Just didn't feel like doing it. And I also didn't really like the thought of going to church on my own either. I would usually have my wife go with me, you see. So it just, she was a huge part of my life and my routine. Now, after some time had passed again, like I started talking to God again. I started praying again, even because I hadn't prayed for very much at all for a while. But now I began doing so again. And I asked God to help me get back into Christianity. You see, I wanted to get back into Christianity because I knew it was true. I knew I love Christianity. It's one of my it's the most favorite topic for me, to be honest. I would read so much Christian stuff. I would watch so much Christian stuff. I love evangelism and stuff. I love creation sciences, and I know it's all true. And I'd also asked God to help me find a a Christian to be with in a relationship, basically. Someone that would encourage me in my own faith, someone that would actually be good for me, right? And of course, something happened that I wasn't actually expecting to happen, and it's that God moved his mighty hand in answer to my prayer. So I'm going to share that with you. That's why I'm telling you, don't give up hope. I saw one of my friends on Facebook, whom I had not interacted with for years. They had actually posted a post about this, some people who had sent some nasty messages, just really rude messages to her. So I decided to ask her if she was all right and things, right? And, with what she had to deal with. And after what she had to deal with. And of course, she was all right, she said. And after that first message I sent her for the first time in years, that was the beginning of many, many wonderful and fun conversations with her. And we've talked almost daily ever since that day. And after 4 months of talking, we actually decided to meet up for the first time in person. We were having so much fun talking. We enjoyed getting to know each other. We found we've got a lot in common, not just with faith, but all sorts of interests, right? So we both believed it was worth meeting in person, see how things go. And I admit I was already falling in love with her. Even before meeting in person, I was falling in love with her as a person, her soul, right? And yeah, we had a great emotional connection. And she herself found it incredible how much we had in common. I remember making comments on that, just how wired she was about all this. So anyway, I flew down from Scotland, Aberdeen, right, down to Luton to meet her at the airport there for the first time. And I was so excited to meet her for the first time. And I'm always excited to see her. I still had a little bit of nerves, of course, even though we both knew that we'd get on great. Just we've video called and things, talk every day. We kind of knew we'd get on great, but of course, it doesn't change the fact that there was just a little bit of nerves, just somewhere in the back of the mind, just thinking, oh, what if she just doesn't like me the same way in person? Hey, who knows? That could happen. That's why I was thinking that, but no. Thankfully, that was needless nerves. We got on great, fantastic. I'm so happy. And I remember when I arrived at the airport, I phoned her because she wasn't there at the time, so I phoned her just to see where she was, and I actually remember seeing her. Well, I heard her first. She saw me when she was coming into the airport, and she was running over to me, and I saw her, and we were just so happy, the delight in the faces. We hugged. It was for me, it was a beautiful moment. And of course, from there, we went on our way to where she lived, and of course, I would stay in a very nearby hotel to where she lived. So, yeah, it was a great day. And I was only down in England actually with her for a week, and I admit I wish I stayed longer. She did ask me to stay longer, but unfortunately, I did have some work commitments. It's just such a horrible feeling, leaving someone you love really deeply, and you just don't want to. You want to spend every second with that person. You just want to stay as long as possible, especially when you're getting on so wonderfully and things and having such a good time. You just don't want to go, do you? But yeah, even though it was just a week, it was for me the most remarkable week of my entire life. It was a special week. I'll never forget it. We went on lovely dates, right? We went went to watch a movie in the cinema. Garfield, the movie was. And we enjoyed the movie, and I always remember at the end of the movie, when the credit music is playing, right? Now we were by ourselves in the cinema, right? And she actually did a nice little dance, just at the end. And, it was so lovely. It was such a sweet moment. I loved everything about that date. And to be honest, I remember looking at her when watching the film and thinking of how happy being with her made me feel. I loved being with her. Even, I loved just the fact that I was with her even more than the movie itself. Yeah. Of course, I loved watching the movie anyway. It was a good storyline, I thought. But yeah, I loved being with her. Another date we went on was a nice, lovely dinner date. And it was actually the most wonderful dinner date I've ever had. And it's not just because of the food. Of course, I enjoyed the food, but it's more purely down to the fact that I had the most lovely lady, most elegant woman, right, that I've ever been on a date with. And she was and is, of course, truly beautiful. For me, the most beautiful woman I've ever met. And you could actually clearly see just how elegant she was, how beautiful she is, and she was happy as well. You can see it, her joy in her eyes. Her eyes shining so brightly. You can see that sparkle in her eyes, and it just made the whole occasion just wow. I'll never forget it. And I remember I've told her that her eyes for me is a great evidence for God, probably the most powerful evidence, because when I look into her eyes, I see the universe into her soul. So that's why I feel it's a great evidence of God. I love looking into her eyes. And since that first week together, we've actually spent a lot more time together. And of course, that doesn't mean that Satan hasn't tried to create obstacles and trying his absolute best to try and prevent us from seeing each other, from being together. And so there have been some frustrating times during, for us both. But God is good. Love triumphs over evil, for God is love. So love triumphs in the end. I remember one of the times that she came up to Scotland, and she came up with her mum. They came to one of my presentations, a creation science presentation I did at a country gospel church that I was invited to speak at. It meant a lot to me, them coming, because it was great to have some people support me, right? People I am close with support me. And I was presenting on the discovery of Noah's Ark and evidence of the global flood and dinosaurs in the Bible. So it was a very interesting topic, and it was actually very well received as well. So I was very happy. I was chuffed, right? And I have to say, my love for this woman is so deep, and it really is deep. I've never felt so emotionally connected with someone. I've never been so drawn to somebody, and I've never been so attracted to somebody either. It's like, wow, I'm just absolutely in love with this woman. And I've never done the things that I've done with her in my life before. Like I've never written poems myself, right, for a woman that I've been in love with. I've written several poems for her about how much I love her and how I feel, and she's always liked my poems as well. So that's good. And I just want to pour my heart out to her, and I've made videos as well for her, doing that, sharing a bit of memories in the videos, a bit of expressing my love about her, or expressing my love to her. I've driven on the motorway for her for the first time. I'd never driven on a motorway before, but I've driven down all the way from Scotland down to where she lives in England. For me, the first time doing it, it was kind of scary because I had no idea what to expect, how the motorway would be. But after that first time, it's a fun adventure. I enjoy driving it now. So yeah, I love doing that. One of the things probably that stands out above the rest, probably in other people's eyes, is the fact that I've written two books for her. Right, the main book, the bigger one, I mean, I had written over 20,000 words, and I called the book something meaningful to me, and I've called it Finding Home. And the reason I called it Finding Home is because home is where the heart is, and I know I love her in a way I've never loved before. And to be honest, I feel like I've finally found home because of meeting her. I explained the journey that we've had together. Um, a lot of, uh, basically a lot of our experience together so far, was to mark basically the 1 year point of when we started talking again, right? It was like an anniversary kind of thing I had written up, right? And it was also because it was kind of late as well for it. It was kind of like anniversary and partly birthday kind of gift. So it was kind of one of those. I thought it was a unique gift, so that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. Something meaningful, straight from the heart. And you know, uh, one of the parts, but like the main message of the book as well, since I call it Finding Home, is because I find, theologically speaking, when you look at back at Adam and Eve, like God took the rib from Adam, right? And so he was no longer a whole person. Part of him was now removed, right? Now, when he gets married again, right? When he gets married to Eve, right? He becomes complete again. He becomes one flesh with Eve. When you get married, you become one flesh. So you become whole once again through marriage. So no wonder why, after meeting this incredible young woman, that I feel truly at home with her. I experience that which Adam must have felt. And I believe that is the case in all true love relationships. I believe it's like the soulmate connection type of thing. Of course, as I said, like there have been some difficult spells when Satan has tried to prevent us from being together, and I think it's because God was trying to bring us together, like has been bringing us together, and so no wonder why Satan's trying to prevent it. And but they say people do crazy things when they're in love, right? And for some people, we could be said to have done some crazy things just to be together, right? That's how much we love each other, and I'm madly in love with her. She's worth every ounce of effort, every thought, every bit of time, and I don't believe there's anything out there that should ever be put above her. As far as I'm concerned, I don't believe anyone or anything should be put above her. That's how much she means to me. Of course, I could say like God has to come first, of course, but you know where I'm coming from when I'm talking about someone I love, right? Of course, I'm sure you do. Most recently, I've done a surprise trip to the Tropical Butterfly House near Sheffield, right? That was just to take her on a nice, lovely day out. I knew she would love it, and I was right. She loved the day out. She really found it a wonderful and beautiful occasion. She just loves butterflies and things, and you could see the joy in her face and, of course, in her eyes. They're just so lit up. It was incredible seeing that. And so it was a happy day out for us both. And I hope and I look forward to many more happy occasions in the future, many more dates. And another thing was I started off that surprise trip actually by putting a letter. I wrote a letter, stuck butterflies on it, of course, butterfly stickers, right? And I stuck it through her letterbox to read, Unfortunately, by the time I was able to post that through the letterbox, it was a bit late, and the reason it was late is because there was so much traffic. So it was like coming down. So I had a bit of a issue there. So things, certain things, of course, didn't happen exactly as I hoped, but I still gave her flowers as a surprise gift, and of course, the trip itself to the Tropical Butterfly House we still did. So the main things we did. Um, yeah, it's certainly a day to remember. That's for sure. A very happy day. Some of the things as well, when we've been together in recent times, we've done a lot of things that we get on well together, like DIY stuff, right? Painting and decorating and fixing things, and even washing a car. We've got a great chemistry. I think it's really good to have this, and it's someone I value in my heart, actually, getting to do these things with her. So yeah, I think this is all I'm going to share with you for now, and I hope it helps to show this positive change, from what looked like a time of just total despair and loss, which it was, but has now come to a point where I can say I'm truly happy, and it's a great blessing. I can see how God has led me to a situation where I'm just absolutely happy, and I want you to feel encouraged and feel that hope that God has something in store for you. We don't have to um, we don't have to give up. Please don't give up. God loves you. He wants you to be happy. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And I believe this woman is a true gift of God to my life. She is, as far as I'm concerned, the answer to the most heartfelt prayer, right? With my, I'm just so happy. I'm so glad to have met her. She is the greatest blessing of my life. Thank you for listening to my testimony. God bless.